Welcome to yet another episode of the 706 podcast. My name is Connor. We're going to go around the room. You may notice something different today. Anybody?
A live studio audience, perhaps?
Yeah?
Yay!
Yeah, we got a live studio audience. Please, for the OG 706 crew, please go around and introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Tony.
Anthony.
I'm Alessandro Bertolini from the province of Genoa. We are very famous for our Christopher Columbus.
Where's Kirk? Is he here?
There's Kirk.
Oh,
I don't know.
I'm Kirk.
Glad we got
he's here.
Alessandro.
I thought we were going to have to say his name a few times, get him to appear.
Call him, yeah.
Blue's Clues style.
And then we have a very special guest.
Special guest.
He
For the
introduced
first
himself.
time.
For the 19th episode.
I'm Tyler. I hate Christopher Columbus like a lot. So.
I'm right there.
What about the filmmaker Christopher Columbus?
Also him. Also him. Even more.
Also from Genoa, yeah.
Tuesday.
Yeah, it's interesting. Tyler's sort of a relative of the 706. Tyler and I were roommates, as was Tony. We were all roommates at one point.
You may remember me from such great videos as not the ramen video. That was the one I wasn't in.
The ramen video. I'm not sure our
We're all involved
listeners.
in the Billy McQueen Food Review
Universe.
YouTube channel, which has not been updated in a while, but maybe we'll get something up here one of these days. But yeah, he's one of the main brain parents of the.
We have a comeback album.
Yeah, we'll do a
Comeback
reunion tour
playlist.
soon. But anyway, he's here now.
All right, enough of the parlor room chit chat. Let's get down to the subject at hand. The movie we watched for this week that I recommended and Kirk picked is 2004's Shaun of the Dead, directed by Edgar Wright. First of the so-called Three Flavors Cornetto trilogy. This has been described as, it really can't be described as anything else than a zom-rom-com. That is a romantic zombie comedy. And that's sort of what it is. It's an interesting genre picture. We're mostly following our Simon Pegg character. At first, it's all about his personal life and his struggles as kind of a 29-year-old schlub who's kind of stuck in a rut. But then slowly, as the movie goes on, we realize there's a zombie crisis going on, and which sort of, to me, I think, stands in and kind of itself is commentary on his own life, or represents things going on in his life, represents this kind of this it's sort of not quite a midlife crisis, but it's a crisis and a turning point of some kind for him. And I think it's a really interesting movie. What did you guys think? You got any other thoughts?
Well, Kirk hasn't seen it before. Let's hear what he has to say.
Was I the only one that hadn't seen it?
I guess so.
Have you seen it, Tyler?
Okay. Well, I did pick this movie, and I wasn't disappointed. This is exactly what I thought this. What I saw is what I expected, more or less. I enjoyed it. I thought it was very clever. I'd also I've not seen Hot Fuzz. I have seen World's End. So I can appreciate, and I enjoyed World's End. So I can appreciate Edgar Wright's sense of storytelling and his ability to create drama and to kind of infuse it with a dark comedy and some witty banter and some just overall good humor, and I appreciate it. And it's anathema to kind of some of the American elements of humor that we've seen in the last few years, kind of like the Judd Apatow school. It's a little more scripted, a little less vulgar, perhaps, in places. But I appreciate it. It's not necessarily my favorite comedy or my favorite brand of comedy, but I can enjoy it nonetheless.
Yes, I'd seen this once before back in high school, and for whatever reason, it just didn't entirely click for me. I think my complaint, if I remember my capsule review or what I would say to people when they brought it up, was like, well, yeah, it's pretty funny, and then the whole third act, it's like a normal horror movie. I don't get it. And then I watch it this time, and of course, that's not true at all. It's definitely gets more serious, more dramatic in the last third.
Emotional stakes, right?
Yeah, but it's still comedic.
Stuff.
It's the comedy's right there next to the drama.
Yeah.
It's one is never really at the expense of the other. I think, if anything, I'm amazed watching this time at how brilliantly Edgar Wright is able to juggle these things, and that's apparent in all his other movies. What's the one? The Scott Pilgrim's one I need to revisit, but the other Cornetto movies, absolutely, it's the same thing. As you have this
And
really
it's Hot Fuzz and
The World's End. Not At World's
I
End.
always want to say At World's End.
but yeah, so it's but yeah, no, it's really cool what he does tonally, because you've got these great characters, these great performances from these actors, and they're really delivering the drama. But at the same time, it's just really clever, and Edgar Wright is just so great. He's so naturally skilled at making something cinematic. Just the style, it's so easy to describe because it's so immediately apparent. You got the whip pans and the way things are cut, and he's got such a singular, like, immediately identifiable style. And I really appreciate that. I really appreciate that he does that he puts that stamp on all his movies. And yeah, I think it really holds together. I enjoyed it.
I think Tony did a good job there describing the sort of directorial elements of Edgar Wright. In terms of his movies, you guys know I already like this, as I've said last week. Connor and I have discussed this movie on our own before. I think this may be a close second, I think, behind Scott Pilgrim in terms of my personal favorite for Edgar Wright. But in just a little bit of background info, one of the things I really like about this movie is the first time I've seen it actually was years ago when Hollywood Video was still around, and I rented it, and I saw it again in high school a couple times, so I don't know how many times I've seen it, maybe 4 or 5. But one of the things I've begun to pick up the more I watch it is sort of the other elements beyond, like, the humor. And one of the things I really appreciate is sort of the beginning and ending parallel of the way the zombies are sort of model to behave as sort of I like this sort of working class commentary. I think Connor could probably speak about this better than I do, the way he knows sort of history. But one of the things going through Edgar Wright's mind as he made this movie was the 2001 and 2003 London riots, in which the youths who were sort of protesting and robbing and breaking into stores were classified, as the UK media were calling them, consumer zombies. I don't know if that had any contributing to the contribution to the.
That's really cool.
Contribution to the script, but it's something he covers in the commentary track to the DVD. I think it's quite interesting. But yeah, no, I like this movie. Just wanted to throw that out there. But let's move on to our special guest.
Special guest Tyler.
My name is Tyler. I've seen this movie once before in high school. Sort of like with Tony, not exactly the same. It didn't exactly click for me. I watched it with like a group of friends, and it just seemed like another one of the movies that they would like. It's like it seemed like pretty neat, but not that neat. I was very impressed. Like Tony was saying, I was very impressed watching it this time around. How like cohesive and incredible it was. I don't. Can I talk about something like a specific feature?
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah.
We'll jump on.
So this is something that like sort of animates. So in the beginning, I would like to talk about Ghost Dad. I don't know what year it is, but it's a movie starring the renowned Bill Cosby. And Ghost Dad is really interesting in the beginning because it's called Ghost Dad. And in the beginning, when the movie starts out, he's still alive, right? And you know that he's gonna die. Mm-hmm. So they kind of keep faking you out. Right in the beginning of the movie, he's like trying to get all his kids in a row. He's trying to get them to school, and he like goes at the top of the stairs, and there's roller skates there. He almost like falls down the roller skates and goes down the stairs. He like almost trips on marbles. There are all these thick moments where you think he's gonna die, right?
Yeah.
And eventually he does that. I don't really remember how he actually does. But it's very, the opening of this movie is very similar because they keep faking you out.
Here's the zombie.
Right,
Here's the horror element.
There are a lot of like little tiny jump scares. They're not full on jump scares, but there are a lot of like very like little sudden things that happening. Little like something like, hey, over here. And there's also just a lot of sort of like not visual metaphor, but like visual comparing of just like how normal people act to zombies. There's a lot of the main character Shaun at one point, this is the very last thing, he shuffles out of bed and he shuffles like along his mat and you just see his feet going and then he yawns and it's like a scary zombie moment.
That's how it starts as well.
Right.
It begins and ends with that.
Right. And you see the neighborhood, you see like the little kid playing ball, you see a homeless man asking for change, all this stuff. And in a way, it seems almost. It kind of like we were talking about this earlier today. How like a zombie movie, it's a little bit. It has the potential to be. It's not like really like inherently. It's not from the start, but it has the potential to be like a little bit misanthropic and solipsistic, and that like it's kind of like.
It's a fantasy.
It's a fantasy of being alone, of being like you're the only one who matters, and these are people, but they're not really people, right? But I don't think that this is that necessarily. It's interesting because in the beginning, when they're faking you out and kind of comparing and or making you think that these people seem a lot like zombies, you see a lot of these characters again when they actually are zombies, and it actually makes it all the more horrible to recognize the kid playing ball and the homeless guy asking for change and the Indian dude in his bodega, to see them like as actual zombies rather than like merely like appearing as zombies. And I thought that like that touched me a lot. I don't know if there's like a greater thematic cohesion in that, like the greater interpretation.
At the end of the movie, you hear briefly on the TV, it's kind of in the background, but you hear kind of newscasters say the zombies are now being recast into jobs, and they're the way they're perfect for service and labor. The service industry. And it's like, well, that's what these people, most of the zombies we were shown were doing before. So, you know, it's like, what's changed outside of the knowledge that we know that their mind is supposedly gone, to add to what you were saying. It's quite interesting.
Well, and it's strange. I mean, too, like I said, we were talking about the opening. Like, it's almost completely ambiguous when you see the opening. You see people, at the shopping lines. You see the cashiers, and they do look weirdly zombie-like. You're like, is that? It couldn't be a zombie, but it looks like one. And then that kind of slowly changes, where we see Shaun walking down the street to his work, or first he always goes to get like a soda, and there's a progression to that too. There's a thing. Everything in Edgar Wright movies comes back at least twice. That's what's amazing about what he does. Everything always comes back twice. I'll have to think of more examples, but he goes into that deli multiple times to get a soda, and there's a progression to each appearance of that deli. But then what he does is, there's the question too of like whether everyone else is the zombie and it's the symbol of wanting to, break out of some kind of, corporate boring slog, or if it really is kind of like he is actually primarily the zombie. Because he's the one who's stuck in this kind of same old routine, doesn't want to do anything new, has no kind of ambition to do anything. And he's the one, too, we talk about solipsism. What's kind of so powerful is, we know the zombie outbreak is happening. It's totally happening. But between him going to the bar and coming home drunk and being hungover, and then getting up and going to the convenience store with his eyes half closed, he's like, he doesn't even notice that the outbreak is happening. And people were never really much more to him than zombies anyway. So it is this kind of this double use of the trope of zombies, that it's both, the people around him or the forces of society, but it's his perception. He perceives them as zombies too. It's very interesting, and it works in a lot of ways. But let me think of what else. I mean, then the other. One big theme of this movie is the idea of growing up. He doesn't have his act together. Really, in the end, if you think about it, it's like, what does he do? What's the big change that happens in his life? He cleans up his room and remembers to do things a little bit better. It doesn't seem like a huge transformation, but it feels like a transformation cinematically when he kind of gets his act together, so to speak. And there's this thing of that was him being a zombie, and we also have the idea of the Nick Frost character, this character who's holding him back, that he can look at, that he can feel like a human being compared to, or something, or I don't know. And then he really is a zombie at the end, despite all these kind of demands that he let him go, and kind of leave him behind.
Well, what do you think that? Or, I'm sorry,
I'm losing my. There's so many kind of trains of thought with this movie.
Well, something I don't entirely understand right now is when Nick Frost becomes a zombie, and what do you think that represents? Do you think that represents him, that character, as like? When you're a zombie forever. You're never going to go beyond that. Is that like representing how Nick Frost's character is just kind of this doofus forever, this slacker forever, and Simon Pegg has kind of potential to go beyond that. He can kind of take care of and help Nick Frost, but Nick Frost is doomed. Do you think that's sort of a metaphor for that, or do you think what function does it serve you?
I think it doesn't necessarily have to serve one. I think it's a funny ending. Let's get out of limbo, folks. We're going down the Inception hole right now.
This is what I love.
No, that's all right. I'm a critic. If you've listened to any of our previous because I'm a critic of overanalysis. So I would say, with regards to the zombies, they're a device through which to create drama. And I
but he didn't have to become a zombie. It could have been Simon Pegg. It could have been anyone else that he could have taken care of. There's a reason they picked him. There's a reason.
Yeah, because
alive.
he's the protagonist, and we wanted him to end up with his girlfriend, who is chasing the whole movie.
Well, there's a
trying to
total
redeem
resonance
himself
of the whole theme
with
of
her.
zombies with the whole thing, and the fact that he's a schlub.
I do understand it. Yeah, I understand the idea of, like, I think it's like him, he's redeeming himself. He's trying to transcend the mediocrity of his life, at the beginning, and how he's perpetually disappointing people, and he's being bogged down by, like, his friend, and but overall, I think it serves, for me at least, it served to create drama, and I think that's its primary purpose. I think everything else is ancillary and maybe unintended.
Another post. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. I see what you're saying, Kirk. I see what you're saying, Kirk. But I think that there is, to me, I was thinking about this when they were in the bar scene, and they were kind of when everybody's at each other's throats, and there's kind of like a very psychological, like sort of like inadequacy thing that, like, Shaun has going on, where he's afraid of disappointing everyone. He feels very sad, right? And there are a lot of accusations. There's a lot of, like, very, like, deep, like, psychological stuff, like, this academic guy who's kind of, like, not a cuckold, a
twat.
Yeah, he's kind of a twat. He's kind of like he's a lame dude, but he's a little bit petty.
Played by Dylan Moore.
Yeah, and he's accused. He's like,
John Oliver-esque.
Yeah.
He's been accused of having once really wanted to be with who Shaun's with now, and having settled for her best friend. There's a lot of, like, that, right? And that's the drama, really. There's not much hand-wringing over the fact that, oh no, there are zombies running around in the streets, right? Nobody ever actually gets really upset about the zombies until it's someone that they know that's become a zombie, right?
And then it's about death and loss.
But they wouldn't be in the
someone
position
behind.
in the first place had it not been for the zombie infestation outbreak. So I think if you look at it at its basis level,
and it can't be used to explain everything like there was one intended kind of resonance or one idea to be interpreted. I think, as Kirk said, it's like, because it's kind of, maybe it's a device first, it's the way that it interacts with this whole theme that creates these interesting ideas, and what is that and what is this, and it just kind of gets the synapses firing. I'm not sure if it teaches.
But I want to go back to Tony's original question, because I always like to view Nick Frost as sort of just a lingering metaphor through the whole story.
Yeah.
At one point, like what Tony was saying, is he can't escape, but by the end of being chained up as a zombie, his sort of he's a physical manifestation of the metaphor of Shaun not being able to fully escape the sort of environment he's built himself.
I was going to say, that's another thing. He doesn't progress.
And he's living the life, or it's kind of hinted that he's fully living the life that Liz initially didn't want and broke up with him for.
Yeah.
They're drinking the beer, they're in the same house, there's not much else to his life. Yeah.
Yeah. Furthermore, I think that the kind of Deus Ex Machina thing at the end, where his ex-girlfriend comes and saves them all, basically also kind of undermines his progression as a human being. Kind of like undermines the idea that he's grown up in any way.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so there's a problem. How is he really grown up? But as for
I think he's allowed himself to partition away certain pieces of juvenile behavior, just most obviously his
literally partition in the shed.
The shed, yeah, it's away. It's removed from his primary life. His milieu within the house. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I saw it. It's like, he compartmentalizes.
Maybe that's his own personality trait. I mean, I definitely think Shaun is the character because he's the middle. Because we have this constant thing of there's dickish people who claim to be authorities and tell you you're doing everything wrong. There are people who love you too, but there's people who are dicks about it. And then there are people who are the lovable schlubs who don't give you shit, and sometimes it involves you in worse and worse things as much as you love it. So it's almost when I first saw, or when I maybe after a couple watches of the movie, I thought the ending of Shaun that it was really kind of brutal, it's this kind of hard truth. You got to shut him away in the shed, But I think there is something to there are lots of parts where people say, listen, you need to cut him loose. You need to cut Nick Frost's character loose. And I think there's something about, he doesn't cut him loose, he keeps him. He doesn't have to become that dick that, everyone, that is telling him to get better and better. And then, of course, but then if you have Nick Frost literally chained up in your shed, I mean, that's not a great ending, is it? But I don't know, you have to read it psychologically or something.
Yeah.
No,
I
like
would
that
say,
reading.
so there are two things I want to comment on. First thing, there is kind of like this weird thread and everything. It's like, at the beginning of the movie, they're discussing the problem where, like, they kind of, his girlfriend wants him to move into its own place, right? She's like, there's not enough room for us to, and then his Nick Frost at the video game he's playing, he's like, something bad happens, he says, fuck! And that problem is actually cleared up by the end of the movie because both Nick Frost and the dickish roommate have died and become zombies. And now they can just live in their flat alone. And that problem has kind of been swept under the rug. And not sure what that pertains. But the other thing, it's interesting, the character of the stepdad with regards to like psychological stuff and like growing up, right?
Yeah.
The character of the stepdad, when the zombie apocalypse breaks out and it becomes apparent that like we need to go save my mom, and
we
also,
gotta kill my stepdad.
Yeah, I think my stepdad's been bitten. They go over the plan multiple times as they're like as they're discussing the possible contingencies, and each time it'd be kind of of course, it's kind of like, I'm so sorry, stepdad, and then they kill him, right? And then the third time it's like, I'm so sorry, and then it's like, then they just fucking kill him, right?
I think it's important to add real quick before you continue of Nick Frost's character, how before all this even happens is making constant sexual jokes about his mom too. Just to add like Connor's psychological reading.
And I think that
aspect, there is a lot.
And I think that there's something like very real to like just kind of like hating. And like there's like people talk. Well, no, I won't get into that. But there's like I think it's a very real thing to kind of resent whoever your parent remarries to.
Yeah, that's a big thing he's trying to get
over.
Like,
that's a big like psychological thing for like a child. I feel like that's a very universal theme. But then the movie kind of sets it up, kind of like to be like he's going to be a zombie and you're going to get the catharsis that you've always wanted. You're going to be able to kill your stepfather actually, and it'll be like for good, right? That's like. And
he's a dick until the very end, and you're like, why won't he just turn on
There's
it
a
so
zombie
he can kill
like
him?
fantasy.
Yeah.
That's like the zombie. But then it's completely subverted, and the stepdad breaks down. He apologizes. He's like, I've always wanted to be a good dad to you.
Moment. I wanted you to have someone to look up to. Yeah.
And I thought that was like super profound and amazing how they kind of like set you up to hate the guy and then care for him, and like you want him to be killed in this very specific way.
I got a question for Tony. Tony.
Yeah.
Is it okay? Tony's kind of like my moral authority when it comes to cinema. Being a film major.
Moral?
In a way, he tells me what's good, what's bad, what's acceptable in the genre, but or in the industry. But Tony, is it wrong for me as a consumer to hold a movie accountable, or at least for it to adversely affect my enjoyment of the movie if it utilizes as its main elements, or as a big element, its theme, it utilizes zombies, which are so tired in 2016, but in 2004, it was still kind of like incipient,
I mean, the Dead remake at that time too, right?
I'm just saying,
is it fair for you to hold it against the movie because you're sick of zombies? Is that what you're saying?
I
mean, it's your
do I have to take
movie.
into account? I mean,
we're just talking about the movie. I mean, if that's your personal thing with the movie, I mean, that can't be helped. I don't think that you should feel bad about that. I think if we're critiquing the movie that may be unfair, I don't think, I mean, the zombies weren't quite as, zombies only became like really such a cliche in the past
Walking Dead.
5 years, right?
I think that the precise moment was the Romeo and Juliet zombie movie.
Was that a movie? It's a Prejudice and Zombie.
No, not that. It was not that. They reviewed it.
Warm Bodies.
Yeah. Warm Bodies.
Yeah, this is pre-Walking Dead. This is
Teresa Palmer.
That's fair.
This is so I don't think.
That was
I
the
think in
specific
its
moment.
time it was still kind of novel. The idea of a zombie.
It was the
comedy.
middle of the zombie renaissance.
I think Zack Snyder's
mid-aughties
Dead was
Renaissance.
around the corner. I don't even know if that was out yet.
Yeah.
Come out after? A year later?
And for me, it's like I get immensely bored by a lot of zombie movies, but this is just a movie that really isn't really about zombies. It uses zombies. To me, it's like very symbolic or something. While also being fun and actiony. I can't deny that too. It's an action
I think
movie.
it's very deft in the way that it handles
very
the
deft.
movie tropes. I think it's a movie that loves movies. That's the category.
That's the whole trilogy.
All the trilogy. Each one is a genre film. This is the zombie one, and there's a cop one, and then a sci-fi one.
I think actually even more fair to say is Edgar Wright just loves art. I think anything that might be classified as art. Scott Pilgrim just loves video games. I mean, that's the source material that he's building upon, but in the movie you get the sense of that. I think this does it really well.
And I think, honestly, it's not even necessarily like subverting the zombie stuff. I think it's partaking in it and just doing it well. I think the zombie stuff just works. I think this works generally as a zombie movie. I mean, there are character deaths that are played not as jokes, but for drama. There are the people who get infected and they have to be killed. And it's all played. It's not played in like a really silly way. It's played fairly straight. But I think it works. I think this because you have good characters and a good foundation for story. And I think that for me, when I watch this, I go, all the zombie sickness or whatever, that all goes out the window because I'm just seeing a good story. Yeah. I don't think about that.
I agree completely. I think that, especially when you're dealing with a movie that, like I said, loves movies, what makes it or breaks it for me is like, is it a movie in its own right? Or is it just kind of paying homage and kind of like an empty like mishmash, cut and paste from all the favorites of the director, right? Yeah. It's a real movie. It's a completely functional movie.
Yeah, you don't have to get. I'm sure I missed a ton of I'm sure I missed 80% of the references in this, but it doesn't matter. It still works. Yeah. He's not making. There's never the sense that he's like smugly like making jokes he knows you're not going to get. It's never like that at all. He's entertaining you. It's a very entertaining movie.
Well, I hate to break across. Not for me. The zombies do not work for me. Honestly, they don't work for me. I find myself wanting it just to be a comedy without the zombies, and I know that's kind of what makes it unique. Is there's this high suspense element to it, and I don't think this would work on its own as a horror or as a zombie movie. I wasn't ever frightened, ever excited, really. I mean, I was kind of amused. I was amused by the drama elements to it. But I'm talking about specifically the zombie action elements. As far as like the interpersonal, psychological elements, those worked for me. But I just found the zombie parts kind of like it just is like, go away, you fucking zombies, and let these people talk about just stuff. Just let them talk. I just want to hear that. I just want to.
But you literally said like 5 minutes ago, the zombies are just an excuse to create drama.
That's I think sometimes they seep in too much. I think sometimes they overstay their welcome, or it's too contextual. I don't know.
Well, was it like in the climax you got sick of them, or it was too action heavy?
I don't know. I don't know. I think just like I know we're meant to. Maybe we're not meant. Maybe we're meant to view it unironically and just kind of embrace it. But for me, it's like I was kind of like, damn, I can't suspend my imagination enough to be scared by these zombies or whatever I'm supposed to feel.
I don't think it's a scary movie, but I get what you're saying.
You know what I mean? It's like
you don't care about the zombies.
I just I'm there for the comedy. I'm there for the drama, the psychological, interpersonal drama, and everything else. The zombies are just kind of this little fly in the ointment for me. But it also makes the movie work. So it's kind of like it's a paradoxical in that situation for me. So I don't know. I'm confused. I'm conflicted. Conflicted.
Nice. I feel you. How are we doing on time?
We're at about 29 minutes. If you want, we can go to the voting.
Sure. Let me just say that, Shaun, that I find it so interesting that it's like every time I watch it, I see a lot more stuff. Same thing with Hot Fuzz. Same thing with At World's End, the Pirates of the Caribbean movie. Same thing too with The World's End, the Edgar Wright movie, and just everything. There's so many little details I can't count them. One thing I noticed too, I guess it's probably more obvious, but I kind of forgot about it. This kind of first-person shooter sequence in the kind of the big gunfight in the bar. We get a little shots of first-person shooterness, and that's okay. What is that for? Well, it's kind of calling us back to the beginning when they're playing first-person shooter games. And what's the big idea of that? I don't know. But of course, it's the trope of like the nerd guy's stupid activity paid off in the end. I don't know. But it's just interesting, and there's just tons of stuff, tons of just kind of double entendres, just double meanings and winking things of like Nick Frost's character when he's talking about the dickish guy. Next time I see him, he'll be dead. And he's literally that's exactly what he is. Next time, he's a zombie.
And I love the thing also. My favorite little thing I noticed was the guy, the roommate, is constantly complaining that they leave the front door open. That leads to a zombie coming in, and they have to so it's set up very well. So
and then once they kill him, then they close the front door. They're like, I think the front door's open. Let's close it.
I like the roommate though who comes back in the bar all of a sudden. It's like, what the hell?
Still naked from the shower.
Anyway, so I guess we can move on to the voting section. I think
how does this work? Does it have to be unanimous in order to enter the canon?
We have to have a majority.
Okay.
It's called 706 actually.
Which is going to be a problem since we'll have 4 voters.
Tyler's vote will, I think,
be
symbolic, ceremonial. All right. And you're going to go last, Tyler, so as not to affect the voting. So, Tony, would you begin?
Sure. Yeah, I can pretty comfortably say yeah. I like it.
Like it? Kirk?
What's that?
I say yeah.
Okay. I voted yes for every single one of Connor's movies, but I'm gonna have to vote no on this one.
Seem not to have liked it. So
I like it. I think I would like it more if I.
Kirk, why do you hate this movie?
Right.
What's wrong with
no, I like The World's End more. I don't know what
I like
it
this
is.
is
I
the
think
end.
Sure.
With the
it's gonna mess me up even more.
I don't know. I like I said earlier, all my points stand. Though I found this movie to be just a treat, and I can appreciate it, and it's well made. It's a well made movie, and it's funny. But I'm gonna say no.
Well, Pirates of the Caribbean marathon guys. I'm leaning no.
Ooh.
No, I'm just kidding. I already said yeah. Basically,
seem to like it. Yeah. So that's a winner for Tyler.
Oh wait, it's my first yes in quite a long time.
Yeah.
Pointed that out. He was really adamant about that.
Right.
Tyler, please, would you have a remark?
I would say as the 3/5 part of the 3/5 compromise, I would say yes.
Okay, excellent.
Is this the first time Kirk was the only no? I'm trying to think. I think it might be.
No, for cachet.
Wait a minute, what's that?
No,
sound?
you are no on cachet.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
I'm hearing some sound. Oh. It's the ghost of Edgar Wright calling out to me saying thank you for avenging Scott Pilgrim.
I nominated that and Connor voted.
And there's no clip because it wasn't unanimous. We don't get a.
No, we're not getting the applause.
We don't get
the applause sound if it's unanimous.
We'll have a special sound clip for Tyler though.
All right.
Sure.
Taino's getting slaughtered.
Wait.
Like Chris Columbus.
Oh, that was great. That was a great clip. That was great.
Okay, so that concludes Shaun of the Dead. Go watch Edgar Wright's other stuff. Okay, guys, now you get to suggest a movie, and I get to choose.
Wait. So is Tyler helping you decide?
I don't know.
I think he can do a rebuttal. Not pitch something.
Tyler can be my advisor.
Yeah, sure.
All right, sure. All right. Well, Tony went least recent, so it's up to him who goes first or last.
Let's see. I have a list of 6 movies to pick from. Kirk, why don't you go?
Why don't I go?
Why don't you go?
It's Tony's decision.
I don't know. Soylent Green, retro futuristic, Charlton Heston. Fun movie. Great death sequence, by the way. Very good. And Soylent's more popular nowadays, so maybe we can get into a talk about alternatives.
I'm really shocked you picked Soylent Green.
We are in New York, so
it seems off-brand.
Off-brand?
Yeah.
It's kind of off-brand.
It's classic sci-fi. I mean,
yeah.
I feel like Kirk's into that. Anyway.
Kirk just likes
I like
movies,
retro
so.
futuristic.
Yeah.
So is it me? Do you want me to go, Tony?
Up to you
No,
guys.
you start.
All right. So last week I went with a older movie, and I know we did an action movie last week and a comedy this week, but before that we had quite a run of real serious, grim, just dark movies. I kind of like this idea of looking to the past and doing a comedy. Sure. So I'm going to go even further back than I did last time. I'm going to go with a 1940 film starring a little actor I don't know if you guys have ever heard of, but his name is James Jimmy Stewart, and it is in a great movie called The Shop Around the Corner by Ernst Lubitsch, one of my favorite directors.
Goodness gracious.
It is one of probably the 2 or 3 romantic comedies that have never stopped being remade is quite a touchstone. I'm actually serious about that phrase. It is a Christmas movie, but it will be just in time for Christmas in July. So that's my nomination.
Man, I guess I'm a masochist because I've been staring at this movie. I wrote it down before, and I've been staring at this one. I'm like, none of them are gonna like it. None of them are gonna like it. But
Silent Killer?
No, it's not. I can't pick anything else in good conscience.
Speed 2.
It is a movie I watched a while back. Stars Kirk's favorite actor, Jesse Eisenberg. It's called Night Moves. You're gonna hate it, guys.
Is this
Light Moves?
Dakota Fanning?
Night Moves.
Night
Is
Moves?
this the terrorist one?
Don't spoil it. Just watch it. I actually have 2 terrorist ones on my list.
I think you have a lot of terrorists.
These are the only 2, alright? But no,
The
it's
one that gets superpowers.
but this is a movie that I think is just awesome. I think it's got a really fantastic, tight screenplay, really just disciplined, tight direction, really solid performances. It's just
tight all around.
It's a movie
Sounds like sex.
It's a movie that just nails it. They just nailed this movie. I remember watching it and just being so into it. And I don't know why I do this to myself, but all right, that's my pitch.
Sure.
So rebuttals.
So we go to the rebuttals. Yes.
We'll let Tyler go last again.
I guess Tyler would be the final kind of advisor, unless you have something to say now.
All right.
Rebuttal away.
Wait, Kirk, what was yours?
Soylent Green.
Soylent Green. Okay. I mean,
Have you seen it?
No. So, Kirk, is Soylent Green like? Do you real? Is it
You're
really,
rebutting. You're not asking me questions.
You definitely. That's the rule now, Kirk. Is that what we're gonna start?
Is this a rhetorical question?
He pleads the fifth.
No. So, is it a movie you think is like really good?
Very slick.
I think it's very thematic, and I think it's worth seeing.
Because I thought it was known
Said the
more for like
magic
its
word
twist than for like
for
being
me.
good. I don't know if that's true, but it's not a movie I've ever heard of as like a great classic of science fiction in my experience.
I mean, it's no Night Moves, but yeah.
Night Moves is really recent. It hasn't had time.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it'll be the Night Moves theater instead of the Chinese Brahmins theater.
Is that what they? Is there a Soylent Green theater? Let's move on. We've
bona fide classic.
You're not going in. Let's move on. Anthony, Jimmy Stewart's great, but the idea of I hate to be that guy, but the idea of watching a romantic comedy from 1940 right now, I'm sure it's good. It just doesn't excite me very much personally. That's literally my thing. I think mine, was just exciting to watch. And I think mine's the most exciting to watch based on what I know about yours. That's my humble pitch.
Okay.
Look, horrible.
I'm just saying my subjective opinion.
Good rhetoric.
He thinks it'll be the most exciting. This is the strength that this movie has.
I can just
wanna
hear
go
it
for
now. I
something
can
more.
hear
Sure.
everyone's kind of, sluggish, like, not wanting to criticize it, but not necessarily loving it. I can imagine it. So
Okay.
that's my.
Wait, so am I rebutting? Did you finish?
Feel free. Yeah.
Wait, what is your movie called again?
The Shop Around the
We're
Corner.
not asking questions, Kirk.
It's You've Got Maid was actually a remake of it.
Oh, really?
It's basically about this. Jimmy Stewart plays a shop clerk who's basically on the verge of losing his job in basically a department store, kind of like Macy's, who's in a pen pal relationship with a girl who he is in a love-hate sort of friendship in, of course. As I've said, it's never stopped being remade, but look, I'm going to say this to Tony just once and say, I'm tired of picking movies of girls just being beat up and hit, of men just being killed and slaughtered and blood everywhere just to appease him. I like this idea of going back to the past, which we haven't done. We haven't done a movie, I think, this early. It's Lubitsch, who has a great career from the silent to the talkies, as he said. The Lubitsch touch is something to explore. I could honestly say I don't know if this is going to be a movie that Connor would love more than Night Moves or even Soylent Green. I have not seen that. But I just think it's worth revisiting. It's worth watching at least once for everyone. So
Can I ask a question?
yeah.
Is there any spanking in the movie?
not that I could recall.
Okay, because that's a trope. That's like actually.
No, I know. Yeah.
Like,
it's
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 probably
not
earlier than 1940.
My suspicion is that Connor would enjoy Kirk's the most. That's my guess.
I mean,
All
I'm
right.
fascinated.
Next time, don't one
To be
word.
honest, I'm fascinated. I know the twist because it's on a T-shirt. But,
Yeah, I
But
think
I'm
we all know
curious.
about that. So now, Tyler, advise me. What should I pick?
Wait, I get to
Oh, I'm
rebut.
sorry.
I thought
I'm
you
so
started.
sorry.
No, no worries. So if I did hear correctly, we have
Oh yes. How
we
could
have
I
two
forget?
Pornhub exclusives. we have Night Nudes and Pitch Black, a hardcore scene starring Tony and who knows who else. But based on the vocal tonality, he's 49 and he's from the Dominican Republic. And we also have a shot around my corner. Based on the famous elbow fist fuck scene from the 1985 Deep Throat classic. But honestly, those are both great choices. I do think mine's a little bit more family friendly, we shall say, and I think you should pick mine, Connor.
Very good, Kirk. You went really hard on that one. I was shocked.
I want to give up now.
Yeah, that's very strong. Very
It's a
strong.
battle of attrition, folks. This is how I win.
Okay, after that,
No one
I'm
ever
at-
says anything about your movie.
I'm at a loss for words, Tyler. Can you please?
I think that you should go for the touchstone, dude. I think that has the potential to be the most interesting. I mean, Silent Green could be like interesting, but like, what is there really to pick at there, right? Where's the meat? There's stuff certainly about society, but like, it's probably going to be kind of facile.
Have you seen it?
No.
It's Blade Runner before Blade Runner knew what it was.
And it's not even that good, but I digress.
I've seen Silent Green. I find it like a little bit fast out, but it is actually very interesting for the time and for the visuals of it. It is interesting. And it is kind of a seminal piece of work, even if it was kind of a cold hit, and people kind of look at it as kind of cheesy now. I see it as kind of a cheesy-ish sci-fi movie, but a good one nonetheless. As for Night Moves, I just don't know what to say. And Tony, you shot it down yourself, and you said,
I'm just being honest.
you said everyone's
You guys
gonna
aren't
hate
gonna
it.
like it at all.
You didn't tell us anything.
What were the other 5 movies? Like, jeez, were the Zapruder film on
I thought you
there?
were going with Pirates of the Caribbean, dude.
No, one's more crowd pleasing, but I know what my heart says. The
Right.
Night Moves is a drama about eco-terrorists set in another time.
Oh, well, that actually, eco-terrorism
I've
is
heard
something
about
that I
terrorism
find
before.
extremely interesting.
yeah, I wish you hadn't played your cards so close to your chest.
Well, you still haven't picked yet. I'm telling you now.
Sure. Yeah, but I think Anthony has a standout pick here because
Yeah.
not only is he taking it back to the past, because we haven't been to this decade yet, the 40s. Yes, the comedy is nice. It's an Ernst Lubitsch. I love the German American, the big Hollywood guys. They got Jimmy Stewart. We guys we're like Jimmy Stewart fanatics over here.
Any chance we could get him on the show? Seance or
Well, I won't
yeah.
spoil anything about mine, but let's just say.
Jimmy Stewart. So with that, I think just the best pick. It is Anthony's.
All right.
Ooh.
So thank you, Anthony. Thank you, guys. Very good picks.
Kind of
All these
relieved,
movies
honestly.
are-
I don't think my heart
Sure,
could
sure,
take
sure.
another beating
Okay.
on this thing.
That's great. So are we listening via radio or to the movie or how's
drive-in
this?
theater.
Okay.
All of us.
Is there a laser
Yeah.
disc? Betamax? How we want
It was available for free through a YouTube open course. I don't know if it still is as of now, so don't trust me on that. But otherwise, it's available every major rental
Would it-
streaming service.
It wouldn't be in the public domain.
It depends. You're probably not for like what Lubitsch.
40s.
What I mean for a studio movie
true.
like
That's
that.
the
I don't
copyright.
like to advocate breaking the law on the show. I mean,
I think the
but
copyright was misplaced, which is
We'll
why
find it. We'll find it.
Hulu had it and Netflix had it for a long time.
Yeah.
I don't know if- yeah. Well,
There's
it's
lots of great
available
online
for
sources.
$2-3
Fine.
every rental streaming service. Trust me.
Sure.
Public domain isn't breaking the law.
No, I'm saying
Right,
if it
no.
wasn't. I'm saying what was important.
All right, and
He wasn't. I'm addressing what he said.
okay.
Let's have
Okay.
a fist fight about copyright law.
Okay, let's
Anyway.
do it. But you'll have to tune in for the pay-per-view edition of the 706 podcast for that fight. So please, guys, like and subscribe. I'm not sure we have that yet. Check out our YouTube
Comments.
channel. I'm putting the pressure on you, Tony. We're putting up the
Yeah.
YouTube channel soon.
Yeah, man.
And good night and good luck.